of like, if you believe in preposterous notions, like there's a guy who came back to life, he turns water into wine, he walks on water. If you believe that, you're not intelligent. You're just not.
Well,
I don't believe you're intelligent. I think you are intelligent in individual disciplines, but obviously if you believe something that makes no sense whatsoever, you believe that someone was magic, someone defied physics, someone had superpowers, someone was a person who could bring people back to life, someone could come back to life themselves. There's no evidence that anybody like that has ever existed.
This? You believe this on the flimsiest fucking evidence that wasn't even written down until 70 or 80 years after that dude died, because Christianity didn't even... So I'm with you. I mean, I'm an atheist.
Even worse than that, because the Old Testament is far older than even the notion of Jesus.
Yes.
But it's not...
But hang on. I do quibble with the idea that you can't be smart. Stephen Colbert is one of the smartest.
But what is the word smart? This is what the problem is. Like, would define smart. Well, if you believe stupid shit, are you smart?
You are implying that the reason why Bill O'Reilly talks about tide goes in, tide goes out is because he's pandering to people, because he's a Harvard guy and there's no way that he would be dumb enough to believe that.
No, I'm implying that because I looked at the way he said it, and I know what he does, and I think he's manipulative, and I think what he's doing is playing to his base. I think there's a lot of people out there that want to see some smug liberal atheist get taken down a notch, and Bill's just the guy to do it, and talk over him, and he's a big giant guy, so he can yell and get all aggressive.
I mean, what I don't understand is, like, Stephen Colbert is obviously a very smart guy. He's a Catholic. Andrew Sullivan, I don't know if you know him, the blogger, he's a friend of Sam Harris's. Like, he's a Christian.
Good luck.
These people find ways of compartmentalizing logic, I guess. So, like, as you say, they believe in something that is totally crazy. I mean, the idea that you can say a certain number of Latin words over a cracker and it'll turn bodily into the flesh of someone who existed 2,000 years ago is crazy magic talk.
Well, it's crazy talk. But there are people that are religious that are extremely intelligent, and I agree with you on this, like Jordan Peterson.
Right.
Who's a brilliant man, who is very religious in the sense that he studies religion and he believes there's some fundamental principles that are involved in religion that are inexorable to the human condition. And I think he thinks they're important to our society and to civility and ethics and morals. I don't think he believes people walked on water. I don't think he believes someone came back from the dead. I don't think he believes this stupid shit. And I don't think the stupid shit is even the original story. The huge problem with religion is translation over time. That's one of the biggest problems. The oldest version of the Bible that we know of is the Dead Sea Scrolls. They don't even use that because it's so fucking crazy. If you listen to some of the translations of the Dead Sea Scrolls or you read some of it, it is unbelievably crazy. I mean, it sounds like science fiction stuff. And if you go back to that version of it, I mean, you're talking about stuff that was written on animal skins. They used to do, they did DNA tests to make sure that the pieces that they got, you know the whole story behind the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Basically, but
they found them in Qumran. These scrolls were written on animal skins, so they were broken up. So to piece them back together, they had to do DNA testing to make sure that the piece of skin came from the same cow. And then they had to try to figure out, okay, where does all this shit go, and then how to put it into place. But they don't even use that version of the Bible. And even if you use the Old Testament, people say, well, that's the Old Testament. We go by the New Testament, which is even more preposterous, because the New Testament was written by Constantine and a bunch of bishops. And men decided what to leave in and what to take out. They decided.
Of course. And the whole chunks of it are contradictory. This is true of the Quran and the Hadith as well as the Bible.
But I mean, we're just talking about the Bible for now. Constantine wasn't even religious. I mean, Constantine wasn't even a Christian until he died. He was converted on his fucking deathbed. I mean, he just did it so that he could unite Rome. He knew what the fuck he was doing. He was getting all these people to operate together. Does this mean there's no God? Absolutely not. Does this mean that I have the answers that you don't have? Of course not. I'm just saying people are full of shit, and that story sucks. It's that simple.
Well, I think what we do too much of is confusing two questions, one of which is there a God, without defining what God is,
right,
and the other of which is there any reason to believe in a particular faith or a particular denomination, to be a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew or whatever?
Well, I think we could break it down even further than that.
Yeah.
People don't know. And anyone who says they know
That's
is
right.
not telling the truth.
Yeah.
We're not talking about,
Well, we do
you
know about
that carbon comes from stars when they explode? Yeah, well, that can be scientifically explained and proven. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, do you know whether or not Jesus was a man who came back from the dead and turned water into wine? You do not. No one does. It is impossible.
I know with as much certainty that he didn't do that
Okay,
as I know
though.
anything about the past.
But you don't. But you honestly don't. You don't.
Well, how do you know what Napoleon did?
You don't.
Right.
Well, we know historical records. We know the stories of people from back then. But the idea that this one guy did things that no human being could ever do today, defied logic, physics, the laws of nature, the laws of life and death, all the different reality, like the realities that we accept today in terms of what's provable, what we know about biological life, all that stuff was violated by this one guy.
Yeah.
So it could have happened.
It could have. It could have. In the same way that
Super
the
unlikely.
Holocaust might not have happened.
No, it's
Yeah.
way less likely than that.
You reckon it's more likely that Jesus was divine?
No, the opposite. It's way more
Yeah,
likely
it's
that
way
someone...
more likely
I
that
don't,
the Holocaust didn't happen than that
Exactly.
Jesus did all of that shit.
and I think the Holocaust is 100% real.
Exactly, me too. I mean, that's kind of my point. Like,
Yeah.
there is a religious people put an undue burden on non-religious people by saying, look, who's to say? I say there's a God, you say there's not a God. It's a 50-50 toss-up. I'm just going to believe in Christian. I've heard Colbert say this to Bill Maher on his show. Look, I'm a Christian. I've got nothing to lose. If I turn out to be right and Christianity is true, whoop-de-doo, I get to go to heaven. If it turns out that Christianity is wrong, then I just die. But at least, give it a chance. This is Pascal's wager, right? This is this idea that you might as well be religious because, hey, if it's true, you've got an eternity of goodness.
But here's the thing.
And you avoid hellfire.
It can't be true because no one knows. Like, no one has died and given you the... No one's died with a VCR or a VHS tape recorder and come back with a...
No.
Look here, put this in the machine and play it. This is heaven. I've shown you.
But it's not even a 50-50 shot is what I'm saying. It's not like Bertrand Russell kind of demolished this idea with his teapot analogy where he said, like, okay, I'm going to claim that there's a teapot circling in orbit between the Earth and the Moon. And now if you deny that, then, hey, it's just a 50-50 shot. Maybe it's there, maybe it's not there. Who's to say? Obviously, you would say, no, I think it's not there, because if there's no evidence that it's there, I'm not just going to believe you because you say it. And similarly, if you say, oh, this guy Jesus, 2,000 years ago, he turned water into wine, he walked on water, and then he was the Son of God, and that God requires you to believe on him, otherwise you're going to go to hell forever, and you say, why should I believe that? Then they can't turn around and say, hey, it's a 50-50 shot. It's not a 50-50 shot. There are good reasons for believing things and bad reasons for believing things. And religion almost always only offers bad reasons for believing in it.
Well, as soon as you start talking numbers, percentages and stuff, like, you're just making those numbers up, right? 50-50. Where are you coming up with that? How's that a 50-50 shot? What is this, Vegas odds? Like, what is this?
A lot of religious people
But it
believe
doesn't
that.
mean, here's the thing, if people are listening and you're getting fucking pissed, it doesn't mean there's not a higher power. It doesn't mean there's not an order to this universe.
Well, that's
it just
right.
means that it's super likely that if there is something that's unbelievably powerful and there's some law that keeps the universe together and some force of good that's trying to guide us, and there's some, there's some beautiful inclinations towards that direction. What I'm saying is, I guarantee you that the people who lived 2,000 years ago, who wrote this shit down on leather with, ink that they made out of plants, they didn't have all the data. They just didn't know. They just didn't.
They
And
didn't
so
have
for
the
us to rely
germ
on
theory
them-
of disease. I mean, they didn't even know that the Earth spun around the sun. How
They
are
knew
these
some
people
shit.
the people who understood the most about the cosmos?
Yeah, they
more
knew
than
some shit.
scientists today.
I mean, the reason why they didn't want to eat pork is because they figured out trichinosis. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
listen, if you eat these fucking pigs, man, people are getting sick left and right. We got to stop doing that.
As for those things that crawl off on the bottom of the ocean,
Yeah.
don't give me any of that shit.
Exactly. Well, you got hooked up with red tide. They're like, look,
Yeah.
people are dying. We got to stop eating shellfish.
No.
And there's a lot of like real logic to the reasons why they had laws, and it makes sense. But the real issue again is the translation. It was the ancient Hebrew version of the Bible. Ancient Hebrew, the words also double as numbers. Like, do you know that letters are numbers in ancient Hebrew?
Yeah, right.
Their alphabet, they don't have numbers. So the letter A is also the number 1. So words have numerical value, like the word God and
Yep.
the word love. They have
Yeah.
the same numerical value. all that was lost in translation when
Yeah.
they translated it to Latin, Greek, eventually English. All that shit was lost. Like, it's the ancient Hebrew version of it. Like, have you ever read like some really goofy translation of English from
Yes.
Japanese?
Yeah, yeah.
And you're like, what in the fuck are they saying?
Or if you translated English into a foreign language and then translated it back from that foreign language
Yeah.
into English, it becomes gibberish.
Well, one of the things I love about Instagram is it has a translation thing that I use a lot of times. 'Cause I follow a lot of Russian fighters. There's a lot of Russian MMA fighters, and I follow their pages. And I'll go, okay, let's hit the translate. And I'll hit translate. I'm like, Jesus.
Russian seems especially hard for some reason. It's got a lot of weird pronouns and things. They're
Yeah.
always